My banana bread almost cost my brother his health and revealed my wife's lie. I wasn't supposed to be home that early. I'd had a rough day at work, and halfway through the afternoon, I just said screw it. I told my supervisor I had a migraine coming on and drove straight home, imagining the comfort of my couch, a hot shower, maybe a nap if I was lucky. I kept thinking how nice it would be to relax a little before my wife got back from her job. Maybe we'd make dinner together. Maybe we'd finally watch that movie she kept saying she was too tired to finish. The idea made me smile a little. After the week I'd had, I needed something to look forward to. But the moment I turned onto our street, that small piece of peace vanished. Her car was already in the driveway. That wasn't the problem. What stopped me was the second car next to it. My brother's. My younger brother, Jason. It wasn't unusual for him to stop by sometimes, but he never texted or called. And he sure didn't just park in the driveway and make himself at home when no one expected him. I sat in the car for a second, engine running, just staring at the two cars. I checked my phone. No missed messages. Nothing from her. Nothing from him. That's when the weirdage started, something in my brain quietly whispering that something was off. Still, I pushed the door open, locked the car, and headed inside. The living room was too quiet. But not the empty kind of quiet, more like the kind where the TV's been paused and someone's holding their breath. I stepped inside and found them on the couch. Not touching, not laughing, just sitting, talking. Close enough to make me stop mid-step. They both looked up at the same time. She smiled, like nothing was out of the ordinary, and he just said, "Hey, man, didn't know you were off?" I said something back. Probably, yeah, or came home early. I honestly don't remember. What I do remember is the air in that room. Heavy. Thicker than it should have been. She got up, hugged me, kissed my cheek, asked how I was feeling. I said fine. Then I sat down on the armchair across from them. Not next to her. Not next to him. Across. We sat there for nearly 2 hours. Talking. Laughing sometimes. My brother told me about some new project he was working on, and she asked him questions like she was deeply interested. I nodded, added a few comments of my own, but I was mostly watching. Watching the way her legs were folded toward him. The way his eyes kept flicking toward her when he talked. The way she avoided looking at me for too long. I paid attention to everything, and all of it felt off. It wasn't that they were doing anything wrong. Not technically. But something about the timing, the silence when I came in, the way they suddenly acted like nothing was happening, it all sat wrong in my stomach like spoiled meat. Eventually, Jason said he had to go. He got up and gave me that same half-smile he always used when he was hiding something. Something from childhood came back to me in that second. When we were kids and he broke Dad's stereo but let me take the fall. That same exact expression. He said, "See you soon," and walked out the door. I watched from the window as he backed his car out of the driveway and turned the corner without ever looking back. She started cleaning up the coffee mugs as if it had been just another visit. As if I hadn't just walked in on something strange that neither of them even tried to explain. She asked if I wanted something to eat. I said no. She told me she had to catch up on some work in the bedroom. I nodded. She left, and I sat there, heart pounding like I'd run a mile, staring at the empty space where my brother had just been sitting. The house was quiet again, but now the silence had a shape. It felt like it was waiting to be broken. But I didn't say anything. I didn't ask her why he was there. I didn't ask how long he'd been there, or why she didn't mention it. I didn't ask him either. I didn't want answers yet, because I wasn't ready to hear what I already suspected. That night, I barely slept. She climbed into bed next to me like nothing had happened, scrolling through her phone with that usual calm, kissed my shoulder, said goodnight, turned away. And I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was watching my life from the outside. That little itch in my brain had turned into something sharper. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that living room. Her on the couch, him sitting just a little too close. The quiet. The look they gave each other when they didn't know I was watching. Over the next few days, I tried to shake it off. Told myself I was being paranoid. That they were family, that I knew her, that I trusted her. But none of those sentences landed like they used to. Every memory of that afternoon came with a side of doubt. My thoughts started looping. Had this happened before? Was that really the first time? Why hadn't she texted me to say Jason was over? Why hadn't he? And why did he leave so fast once I got there? I started paying attention to everything. Her tone when she talked about my brother. Her body language when he was mentioned. The way she glanced at her phone a little more often now. How she smiled at texts but didn't mention who they were from. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't crazy. But I also wasn't ready to accuse my wife. Not yet. So I just stored it all. Every small oddity, every gut feeling, every tiny moment that didn't sit right, I kept them in a mental drawer. Locked. Untouched. For now. And just like that, something between us shifted. Not with words. Not with fights. Just with silence. A slow, creeping distance that grew between two people who used to know each other inside and out. She still kissed me goodbye in the morning, but it felt like a routine. She still asked about my day, but the warmth was gone. I still smiled at her, but only with my mouth. Inside, I was watching her like a stranger in my own house. And in the middle of all that unease, I still hadn't told a soul. Not my mom. Not my friends. Not even Jason. I acted like nothing had changed. But something had. And deep down, I knew I was standing at the edge of a cliff. I just didn't know yet how far the fall would go. It's strange how silence becomes the loudest thing in a house. After that evening with Jason, the days started stacking up like damp laundry, clean on the surface, but something not right underneath. She never mentioned him stopping by. Not once. And I never brought it up. At first, I told myself I was just overthinking, that if there was something truly wrong, I'd know. I'd feel it. But that's the problem. I was feeling it. In the way she didn't ask me to lunch anymore. In the way she started coming home later than usual, saying things like back-to-back meetings or traffic was insane. There was a time she'd send me selfies from the office or snap pictures of her lunch tray at that cafe she liked near her job. But now, she barely messaged me during the day. And when she did, it was short, cold, functional. I remember one Wednesday afternoon, I texted her asking if she wanted me to pick up her favorite takeout. She usually lit up at the thought of Thai food. This time, all I got back was, can't. Not coming home for lunch. Swamped. I stared at those 6 words longer than I should have, reading between lines that might not even be there. And yet, I knew something was shifting. When I came home that evening, the house was dark. No smell of candles burning. No faint hum of music from the kitchen. Just shadows and quiet. When she finally walked in nearly an hour later, she kissed me on the cheek and went straight to the bedroom. Didn't even ask how my day was. I watched her disappear down the hallway and heard the bathroom door shut behind her, followed by the soft rush of the shower. I stood there, takeout bag still in hand, not even hungry anymore. I tried to tell myself she was just tired. Overworked. Maybe things at her job were heavier than usual. But it wasn't just her schedule that changed. It was her energy. Her presence. She used to linger when we talked. She used to rest her hand on my arm when I spoke, like she needed to feel me while I shared something about my day. Now she stood with her back to me at the sink, brushing her teeth, staring into the mirror like I wasn't even in the room. I'd say goodnight. She'd hum something in return without looking. Then lights off. Silence. Jason, meanwhile, hadn't come by since that day. No text either. No random calls, no memes sent to our family group chat. Not even at you watching the game? And that was louder than anything else. My brother and I had never gone this long without talking. Not in our entire lives. At first, I thought maybe he was just busy, or maybe avoiding me because he sensed how uncomfortable things had felt that day on the couch. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that his silence was more than just avoidance. It was guilt. I started thinking back to all the moments I'd brushed off before. How she used to laugh a little too hard at his jokes. How he always insisted on helping her clean up at family dinners, even when I told him I'd handle it. How they'd sometimes talk in low voices during barbecues, her smiling while pouring him drinks, him standing too close. All those little moments that I had buried under the belief that they were family, that they loved each other like siblings. But the more I played those memories back, the less innocent they seemed. I remembered one Thanksgiving she'd worn this soft red sweater and sat between us on the couch. Jason had made a joke about stealing my spot next to her. Everyone laughed, including me. But now, that moment rewound in my brain like a warning I hadn't caught in time. I started staying up later at night, watching her. Not in a creepy, obsessive way. Just trying to see her clearly again. Trying to notice anything I might have missed. And I did. I noticed how she'd start doing her makeup before work again, even when she said she had no meetings that day. I noticed how she started keeping her phone face down on the table, or how she'd take it with her even just to go water the plants. One morning, I reached for her phone to check the time while she was brushing her hair. She froze, just for a second, but it was enough. I acted like I didn't see it and put it down. But inside, I was boiling. Still, I didn't say a word. Not to her. Not to anyone. Because the worst part of suspicion is not knowing whether it's real, or if it's something your mind is feeding on because you want it to be real. Because then it would justify the sick feeling in your stomach. It would explain the emptiness in the house. It would mean it wasn't just in your head. I hated that part. The guessing. The endless mental tug-of-war between logic and instinct. Between trusting the woman I married and questioning every word that came out of her mouth. One night, I caught myself staring at the wedding photo in our hallway. The one with her laughing as I kissed her temple, her hair blowing just slightly in the wind. I looked at that frozen moment and tried to remember what it felt like to be in that second. To believe in it. To live inside a life where none of these doubts existed. I couldn't. That version of us was gone. And I didn't even know when it had disappeared. The worst part was the loneliness. Not just the kind you feel when someone's physically gone, but the kind that happens when they're right next to you, but unreachable. We'd sit on the couch at night, like strangers in a waiting room, watching shows neither of us really liked, saying goodnight without eye contact. She was here, but not really. And I was still pretending everything was fine. Still playing the role of the husband who trusts, who believes, who doesn't ask why his wife now works late every other night, or why his brother hasn't looked him in the eye in weeks. But I was watching, recording it all in my mind like a growing list of unspoken truths. I hadn't even told my mother. She called once and asked if everything was okay, said I sounded off. I told her I was just tired. That work had been a lot lately. She believed me. But even in her voice, I could hear it. The slight hesitation, the mother's instinct. She knew something was wrong. She just didn't know what. Yet. And so another week passed. Then 2. Then 3. The space between me and my wife stretched until it became something else entirely. Not just distance, but a wall. One she didn't seem interested in tearing down. One I was now starting to build from my side too. Not out of spite, but out of protection. Because the more I watched her pull away, the more I realized I couldn't let her see how close I was to cracking. I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know how soon the truth would hit me like a freight train. I only knew one thing. Whatever was happening behind my back was no longer just about my imagination. It was real. I just didn't have proof. Not yet. It happened on a Sunday night. Nothing remarkable about the day itself. Just one of those quiet, gray afternoons where you try to find something productive to do so you don't think too much. She'd been gone most of the day, said she had errands and some work to catch up on, and I didn't press for details because by now, that had become routine. I stayed home, trying to clean out a hallway drawer that had been collecting random junk for years. That's when I found the iPad, my old one, dusty and half dead, wedged under a pile of tangled cords and instruction manuals. I had forgotten it even existed. It hadn't been touched in months, maybe a year. I remember Jason had borrowed it when his laptop crashed sometime last summer, and when he gave it back, I just tossed it in the drawer and never thought about it again. Out of curiosity more than anything, I plugged it in. The screen flickered to life slowly, like it was waking up from a coma. The old background was still there. Our Christmas photo from a few years ago, her in a red scarf, me with a cocoa mug, and Jason photobombing us in the background. That image hit me like a punch to the chest, but I brushed it off and kept tapping around. It was sluggish, full of app updates and backup notifications, nothing interesting at first, until a little alert popped up that didn't make sense. New photos added to shared library. I stared at it for a second, confused. I didn't remember ever linking this to anything recently. But apparently, the cloud had kept it connected all along. When I opened the photo gallery, it asked for a passcode. I still remembered it. The moment the gallery opened, the world shifted. The recent thumbnails weren't mine. I hadn't taken any of these. They didn't look like stock images either. I tapped one, and everything inside me went silent. It was her, my wife, asleep in a bed that wasn't ours. The lighting was soft and yellow, unfamiliar, not our bedroom. Her hair was spread across the pillow, her arm under her cheek. She looked peaceful, comfortable. But that wasn't what stopped my breath. What did was the other arm, the one draped across her waist. It wasn't mine. It was his. Jason's. I knew that tattoo on his wrist, the one he got in college, stupid and impulsive. There it was, plain as day, resting across my wife's body like it had every right to be there. I tapped the next photo. And the next. None of them were graphic, nothing you could report or ban, but that almost made it worse. They were intimate, private, real. In one, his face was visible in the mirror behind them. Barely, but enough to recognize the expression I had seen before: smug, lazy, satisfied. In another, she was curled into his chest, her ring still on her finger. My ring. I didn't feel anger, not immediately. What I felt was something colder. Numb. My hands trembled slightly as I backed out of the gallery and opened the settings. There it was, the old iCloud account still signed in, still syncing. Jason had never logged out. Maybe he didn't think he needed to. Maybe he never imagined I'd look. Or maybe he just forgot. Either way, the truth had arrived. Quiet, digital, and absolute. I closed the iPad, placed it beside me, and just stared into the room without seeing anything. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. I just sat there as the weight of it anchored itself inside my chest like a stone. The images kept flashing behind my eyes, uninvited, involuntary. My wife, asleep in someone else's arms. My brother's arms. I tried to piece together how long it had been going on, how many times they had lied to my face, sat at the same table as me, smiled at birthdays and holidays while sneaking around behind my back. I remembered that afternoon weeks ago, me walking into the house, seeing them on the couch, too casual, too quiet. It hadn't been paranoia. It had been the first crack in the wall. And now that wall had completely collapsed. I didn't text her. I didn't call him. I didn't forward the pictures or send cryptic messages. I just let the silence thicken around me like a second skin. When she came home that night, I was already in bed, eyes closed, pretending to be asleep. She walked into the bedroom, calm, humming something under her breath, brushing her hair like nothing had happened. She kissed my shoulder, slid under the covers, and turned away. I stayed still. I didn't move. She had no idea that while she was out running her so-called errands, I had found the photos, the evidence, the betrayal in its purest form. And I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Because now I had proof. The days after I found the photos felt like some kind of dream you can't wake up from, where everything around you looks the same, but you know none of it is real anymore. She kept playing the same part, kept waking up next to me, putting on her makeup, fixing her hair, drinking her coffee in that slow, absent-minded way, like she wasn't standing inches from someone who now knew every single thing she thought she had hidden. And I kept my mouth shut. Not because I was afraid, not because I didn't want to confront her, but because something inside me hadn't clicked into place yet. I needed to sit with the truth a little longer. Let it harden into something solid. Something I could carry. I don't think she noticed anything different about me, and if she did, she didn't let it show. That in itself told me everything I needed to know. The way she could smile and ask if I needed anything from the store. The way she still threw her laundry in with mine. The way she hummed while brushing her teeth. That's what made it so much worse. The ease. The pretending. Like she'd done this so long now that it didn't even feel like betrayal to her anymore. Just routine. She had started skipping lunch at home more often. At first, she made excuses, back-to-back meetings, staying in the zone, carpooling to pick up takeout with a coworker, but eventually she stopped offering reasons altogether. I'd ask if she was coming home for lunch, and she'd just say, "Not today," without even looking up from her phone. That morning she said it again, almost casually, while standing in front of the fridge. "I won't be home later, by the way." Big deadline. She closed the door and kept scrolling through her screen like I wasn't even there. I said nothing. Just nodded. She walked out the door 10 minutes later, heels clicking down the hallway, and I just stood there in the quiet kitchen, staring at the bananas on the counter. 3 of them. Spotting just right. I don't even know why the thought came to me, but I grabbed them, peeled them, mashed them slowly in the big ceramic bowl she always used for mixing batter. I got out the flour, the sugar, the cinnamon she liked. I added a little vanilla, a pinch of salt. I moved through the motions without really thinking, like my hands remembered a life that my heart was no longer part of. I hadn't baked in months, maybe years, but that morning I did. Not to impress her, not to trap her, not to prove anything, just because I didn't know what else to do. By the time the bread was in the oven, the whole house started to smell warm again. It smelled like Sunday mornings used to smell, back when we still stayed in bed a little longer, when she still asked me what I wanted for breakfast and actually listened to the answer. I stood by the stove with my arms crossed, watching the crust rise through the little glass window, wondering how many times I'd imagined this kind of life and how far we had drifted from it. When it cooled, I sliced it into thick, soft pieces, wrapped them in foil, packed them neatly into one of those lunch bags we kept under the sink. I slipped a cold pack in there, just to keep it fresh. And then I took a sticky note from the drawer, wrote, "Don't forget to eat today," smiley face, in blue ink, and stuck it to the top of the bag. I placed it by the front door, so she'd see it when she came back for whatever thing she always forgot. She always came back around 11 to grab something: headphones, a charger, a scarf. I didn't want her to think too hard about it. I didn't want her to think anything at all. Just see the bag, take it, and go. That was the plan. And that's exactly what happened. At 11:18, I heard the familiar jingle of her keys outside. The door opened. She stepped in fast, half out of breath, mumbling something about running late. She noticed the lunch bag right away, picked it up, read the note, and smiled. It wasn't fake, either. That's what got me. It looked real, like I'd done something that meant something to her. "You made this?" she asked. I nodded from the kitchen. "Banana bread," I said. "Haven't made it in a while." She peeled the sticky note off and looked inside. "Thanks," she said. Seriously. Then she grabbed her phone charger from the bedroom, walked back through the living room, and left. I stood by the counter for a while after she was gone, not knowing how to feel. I wasn't proud of myself. I wasn't angry either. I think I just felt tired. Like I had used up the last piece of myself that still believed this marriage was real. And even then, the part of me that made that bread, that packed it carefully and added that stupid little note, that part still wanted to believe she'd take it to work, sit at her desk, and think of me when she ate it. That maybe some tiny piece of me would still matter to her in a room I wasn't allowed to enter. That maybe kindness still had a place in all this wreckage. I didn't know where she really went after leaving. I didn't ask. I didn't check. I just sat in the kitchen for a long time, the smell of cinnamon and bananas clinging to the air like a memory that didn't know how to let go. It started with my mother's voice. I hadn't heard her sound like that since the night my grandfather died. I was on the couch, half watching a game I didn't care about, when the phone rang and her name lit up the screen. The second I picked up, I knew something was wrong. She was speaking too fast, breathing too hard, her voice caught in that space between panic and helplessness. "It's Jason," she said. "He had a reaction. A bad one. He's at the clinic now. They said it was his allergy. Can you come? Please." I was already standing, already grabbing my jacket, keys in my hand before she even finished the sentence. I didn't ask more questions. There was only one allergy that could put Jason down like that. Bananas. The one thing we all knew could kill him. I drove faster than I should have, my mind flipping between memories of our childhood school lunches, birthday cakes, the way our mom used to hover over every restaurant server to make sure nothing was cross-contaminated. Jason had learned early on how to be cautious. He didn't take risks. He checked everything. So how the hell did this happen? When I walked into the clinic lobby, I spotted my parents immediately. My mother was pacing, her hands wringing the edge of her sweater. My father looked like someone had unplugged him, just sitting there in a daze. "They're stabilizing him," Mom said quickly when she saw me. "They think it was exposure, but they don't know how. He said he didn't eat anything." I nodded and asked what room he was in. A nurse at the front desk pointed me down the hallway. The second I stepped into the room, I saw him, Jason, hooked up to IVs and oxygen, eyes half open, chest rising in uneven, shallow breaths. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him, paler than I thought possible, sweaty, drained. The doctor glanced up from the chart and barely nodded. "Severe anaphylaxis," he said, mostly to himself. "We're monitoring closely. He's responding slowly, but steadily." I took a step closer to the bed. My mother followed behind me into the room. "They don't know what caused it," she whispered. "He swears he didn't eat anything unusual." I looked over at the nurse who was checking the monitor. "So you think it wasn't something he ate?" She shrugged slightly. "Nothing in his system points to ingestion. No traces on his clothes or skin. That's what's confusing. It's like it came from secondhand exposure." The doctor chimed in. "It's rare but not unheard of. If someone close to him had recently consumed banana, especially in larger quantity or concentrated form, prolonged physical contact could be enough. It'd have to be extended, though, more than just a hug or handshake." My mouth felt dry. My hands, which had been hanging at my sides, slowly closed into fists. I looked at Jason again. His eyes fluttered open just long enough to meet mine, and in that split second, I saw something behind them I wasn't prepared for. Guilt. Pure, raw guilt. I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. Then I looked at the doctor. "I made banana bread this morning," I said. My mom turned sharply toward me. "What?" I nodded, slowly. "Banana bread. I made it for her. She didn't come home for lunch. I left it by the door. She took it." I turned to the doctor again, voice steady now. "So if she ate it, and then came into contact with him later, The nurse nodded slowly, already putting the pieces together. If they were close, intimate, kissing, for example, that would absolutely do it. My mom's hand went to her mouth. My father stiffened behind me, his posture suddenly straightening like he understood what I was really saying but couldn't bring himself to believe it. The room felt cold. Too quiet. I turned back to Jason. His eyes were closed now. Not asleep. Just shut tight. Like if he didn't have to look at me, it wouldn't be real. I didn't say anything else for a second. The silence was heavier than anything I could have said. Then I spoke again. To the room. To my parents. To the air. She took it with her. I repeated. And now he's in this bed. He didn't eat anything. The only explanation is her. If she touched him, if she kissed him, after eating what I made for her, I trailed off. No one needed me to finish. My mom turned toward Jason, her face twisted in something I'd never seen before: shock, betrayal, heartbreak. My dad was looking straight at the floor, jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. The doctor and nurse backed off, sensing this wasn't a medical discussion anymore. This was something else now. Something heavier. I looked at Jason one more time. He didn't open his eyes. He didn't move. He didn't deny it. That was enough for me. I stepped away from the bed. My mother whispered something to me, but I didn't register it. My ears were ringing now. My hands felt too steady. That was the strange part. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't breaking anything. I just turned around, walked out of the room, and let the door close softly behind me. I didn't stop in the hallway. I didn't look back. I just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, already knowing who I was about to run into next. She was walking fast down the hallway when I saw her. Her hair still perfectly in place, coat draped over one arm, phone clutched in her hand like she'd just stepped out of a meeting and into a nightmare she hadn't prepared for. She didn't expect to see me. That much was obvious. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened slightly, a breath caught between surprise and performance. "What happened?" she asked, rushing toward me like a concerned partner, like she had any right to ask. "Is Jason okay?" I came as soon as I heard. "Your mom called me. I didn't know if I should come or—" I held up a hand and she stopped talking instantly. Not because I yelled. Not because I looked angry. But because for the first time since this entire thing began, I looked at her without confusion, without doubt, without pretending I didn't already know everything. She tried again, softer this time. "Did they find out what caused it?" Her voice was smooth, trying to sound worried. But I could see it. Right there, behind her eyes. The fear. Not the fear that he might not make it, but the fear that I finally knew. I looked at her for a long time. I wanted to remember that face. Not the one I married. Not the one in our photos or in my memories. The one that stood in front of me now, wearing guilt like perfume and pretending not to smell it. "You ate the banana bread I made this morning," I said. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. She wasn't expecting that. "You took it with you when you left the house. The slices I packed, the note I wrote. You took it. You ate it." She nodded slightly, confused at first, like she didn't know where this was going. But she did. I could see it dawning on her like a slow, dreadful sunrise. "He didn't eat it," I continued, voice calm and cold. "Jason didn't eat banana bread. He didn't eat anything new today. The doctors couldn't find any banana in his system. No ingestion, just exposure." Her mouth opened, just barely, like she wanted to say something, to deny, to redirect. But I didn't give her the chance. "You touched him," I said. "Not a handshake. Not a hug. Long enough. Close enough. The kind of contact that takes time. That transfers things." She blinked. "That's not." I kept going. "And now he's in a hospital bed with a tube in his nose, having trouble breathing, because you couldn't even remember that the man you're sneaking around with is severely allergic to the thing your husband lovingly baked for you." Her face dropped then, the blood draining out of it, the mask slipping all at once. No words. No excuses. Just silence. The kind that finally tells the truth. "My parents are in there," I said. "They heard everything. The doctor explained what exposure would take. They're not stupid. They know what happened. You don't need to lie anymore. Not to them. Not to me. Not to yourself." She looked down at the floor like it might open up and swallow her. She took a step forward, but I didn't move. She stopped. "Please," she said, barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean," I laughed. "Just once. A bitter sound." "You didn't mean to what? Put his health at serious risk? Or get caught?" She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Not harshly. Not with anger. Just a step. That was all it took. "I don't care why anymore. I said. I don't want your reasons. I don't need your apologies. I just want you out of my life. Her eyes filled with tears. Maybe they were real. Maybe they weren't. I didn't care. It's over, I said. And you'll have to explain it to everyone else. I won't be there for that. I turned then, calmly, and walked past her down the hallway, past the nurse's station, past the front desk. I didn't look back. Not when she called my name. Not when she said she was sorry. Not when she started crying. I just walked out the front doors and into the night air, the cold wind hitting my face like the first real breath I'd taken in weeks. That was the end. And if you were me, would you have said anything different?